The following is a conversation with Naylor Taliaferro. Naylor is a longtime green industry professional and OG content creator. He's probably better known as the lawn care rookie, although he may need to rethink that title as at this point he's pretty far from it. Naylor is a community builder and runs the LCR Summit every year in Louisville, Kentucky. He's the host of LCR Media Podcast, a podcast where he interviews other green industry pros and gives motivation that is much needed and appreciated by listeners. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Naylor Taliaferro. What's up, everybody? I'm sitting here with the lawn care rookie himself, Naylor Taliaferro. How's it going, Naylor?
I'm doing great, Joey. How's it going?
It's going good, man. So I wanted to start this off with what got you interested in the media side of things. I know you talk about the lawn care stuff a lot. What got you on the media side?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess it kind of went, it all kind of went hand in hand. Like when I started my business, 10 years ago, my lawn care business, I stumbled upon the infancy of the community here in the lawn and landscape industry because I was just trying to research for my business. I was trying to figure out how to like price and, like what kind of software to use potentially. Like, and 10 years ago, surprising as this might seem, there wasn't a whole lot of that really out. I wasn't like as much of a thing as it is now. Like I didn't know the term CRM or route density or any of these things, or knowing your numbers. I didn't have any of those. I was going from retail management, so I knew about business and managing people, but then I was switching over to running my own business in lawn care. So I just really had no idea those types of terms. So I was just trying to research and figure it out, like what type of services can I offer, how to offer them, all that kind of stuff. And through that process, I quickly found a few people on YouTube that were making regular content, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't anywhere near the amount of, there was no TikTok and Snapchat and all these things. There was Facebook, YouTube, probably Instagram, but I just kind of focused on YouTube and was watching a lot of videos. And then I wanted to make my own videos because they weren't really talking about the things that I wanted to know. Like I was a rookie, I was just starting out. That's why I named myself and my channel the Lawn Care Rookie, because everybody else had all this experience that like the Lawn Care Millionaire and everyone, that they were all talking about all these different things from like years and years of experience of building these businesses. So I just wanted everyone to clearly know that I was not, like this experienced person. I'm a rookie. I'm just starting out. Right. So
Right.
that was really what I wanted, to relay. So that's why I was a lawn care rookie. But so I just decided I would just start sharing my trials and tribulations with whoever, with the community, like the little bit of community that we had at the time. Like there was the same kind of people commenting, and watching and liking and subscribing, I'm sure, to the few people that were making content. And then I became a part of that world. But I really just wanted to become a part of the community, in the very beginning, because I was like, wow, this is kind of like a brotherhood. It's a family that I never had. I grew up an only child, and like I never really realized I kind of was missing that until I kind of got into that or got connected with that and was like, oh man, this is a great feeling, this community vibe and family vibe and all these guys that are very similar minded to me. A lot of folks at the time were coming from the same kind of story, like leaving corporate America and all that. And I just wanted to be part of that. So I started, putting my own content out there, which was really like, trial and tribulation, rookie type stuff. Like, this is what I did wrong. This is what I did to fix it. Here's something cool I figured out. And, some people kind of were, some of the experienced guys were like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought about that. Or, they forgot about it, right? You get 10, 20 years into it and you're this experienced business owner, and you get a little complacent in some ways, or you just kind of forget about certain things if you're not always hands-on to everything all the time, or you're not at the ground level bootstrapping anymore. So that was me. So I was the one just putting all that content out there, and it was really just having fun and connecting with the community in the early days, like that first year or two. And then it quickly, like the community just started growing. More and more people started getting on YouTube and other social media platforms as they popped out to create content. So the community grew even more content creators, influencers. And then the brand started to pick up, and they started to pick up on it. They started to pick up on the whole idea, and they wanted to be a part of it, and started creating ambassador programs and affiliates and all these things, partnerships and sponsorships, and it just kind of turned into this whole new world that I was in the forefront of. Like I was in the center of it. I was the one that was thinking like outside the box. So as soon as I like saw like the slightest bit of potential. Like, I saw a couple of guys getting like a free trimmer or something. And while that was cool and all, I was really just kind of seeing like the ultimate picture, like where we are today. Like, man, imagine if like we could just help, we could all connect and grow the community, the brands can be a part of it and all that. Like, I just had this vision of this crazy big picture. So I was just working my way through there and just trying to, fit in where I get in and create stuff all on my own. And a couple of years in, I created LCR Media because I wanted to have a clear separation between my lawn care business and my media business, because I started hosting events. I mean, really, it was just one event initially. What we called the YouTube Rally. Now, at the time, it was called the GIE Rally, because the big trade show in our industry is now called Equip, but it used to be
Right.
called the GIE Plus Expo. So we all got together on a Thursday night. It's a several day expo, and Thursday was kind of like the first main day. So at the end of the day, we'd all get together at a local restaurant down the street. That night we'd hang out, have some drinks, some food, have a good time. And like I said, the brand started to pick up on these things, and I created a Facebook group, and I just always wanted to help foster growth in this community. And then a couple of the early adopters, or godfathers, if you will, like the leader, some of the initial leaders that I found on YouTube initially and then befriended over the first couple of years, some of them decided to do different things. They got out of the industry altogether, or they did different things on YouTube, and some of them just disappeared off the map basically, and just did different things. And I didn't want to see what we started building to fall apart or go away. So I just kind of took control of the reins and, gathered everyone that was still in the mix, like Keith Kalfas and Stanley Dirt Monkey Genetic and B&B Lawn Care, like a lot of the OGs at that time and are still going. I got them together and was like, hey, are we going to the GIE again? And just kind of kept it going. I created a Facebook group, Road to Equip, so that we could streamline communication and all be on the same page and just be super psyched up about, that trade show and the meetup on Thursday, which, we've rebranded it to the YouTube Rally just to make it more about us and not necessarily about the trade show. We go to the trade show for the trade show, but then also for each other, so we can reconnect or connect for the first time face to face and then hang out. And that kind of really spiraled into a whole new world for me, because of that, then I created LCR Media, because I'm like, we need a bigger venue, because it grew so fast. Once I made the Facebook group, we went from like a dozen people to over 100 people, and we couldn't fit, this had an inside outside parking lot sidewalk of this restaurant, and it was packed. People couldn't even park, couldn't pull in. They were freaking out. And people were texting me, sorry, I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Like, it's too stressful. Like, I mean, I get it. I have lots of anxiety too, that I deal with different times and stuff. So it's just kind of one of those things that I think happens with a lot of folks in this industry and where they came from. So I get it. And I felt bad. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, we need a, somebody actually joked and said, we need a bigger boat. Like it's an old Jaws, old school Jaws movie clip there. But it's like, we need a bigger boat. Like there's way too many people here, and I don't want anyone to feel left behind. So that's where I really tapped into this whole bigger idea. And that's when I first approached, actually one of the brands approached me. I think they're the ones that said, you're going to, you need a bigger place. You outgrew this, or you're going to need a bigger boat or whatever. And they were the first ones that were like, maybe we can help you out next year. So I immediately, like after we were done, like a couple weeks later, I wanted to put their money where their mouth was, like right away, and strike while the iron's hot, and started planning for next year and see what money they can throw our way and start sponsorships, and connected with a lot of other content creators at the time, and just really started to build it out and see what that would look like. And so that's how it all started. And I wanted all of that to go through LCR Media, like all the money coming in from brands to pay for the venue and shirts to give away at the door and the food and all the things. Because once you leave a restaurant, when you outgrow a restaurant, now it's like super expensive, because you got to pay for the venue, you got to pay for the food, you got to,
Right.
security potentially. Like I got all that stuff now. Like I need security, food, drink. Well, it's always been a cash bar because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
But there's food, there's, shirts always that we give away, which is part of, giving. It's a win-win for everyone, right? Like it's a souvenir, a memento for everyone that goes there. And every year it's like a collector item. It's always got a different date on it. And I kind of switch up. It's always a different color shirt. Sometimes I switch the font and things like that. And on the back has all the brand partners on it, right? Their logos. So that helps them, give them all that brand recognition. And then obviously the attendees get something cool to take home with them. Like, who doesn't love hats and shirts, right? We always
Right.
love that kind of free stuff, especially when we go to big trade shows. So it just really has grown and evolved to like over 600 people now every year. Like, it's like this huge, massive thing. And in between all that, like, and this was probably 8 years ago, not 10 years ago, 8 years ago when this really started, when I started that journey while still growing my lawn care business and then building LCR Media out. I started doing more and more events because I saw how successful it was, the rally, and how much it impacted me. Like the first year I went, before I like kind of like, took the leadership role, and, like the very early, not 10 years ago, I didn't go that year because they had just kind of came up with it and threw it out there, the idea over the summer, the couple of YouTubers at the time. I was like, oh man, I don't have any money for that. Like, I just started my business. I had to get a second job to get through that first winter. Like, it was crazy. But I made sure that I was able to go and saved up money for the second year, which was my first year. And most people think of that as the first year, but I went that year, and a bunch of people already knew who I was because I had been on YouTube for like 2 years by that point, or
What year did you get on
almost.
YouTube?
2014.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
That's quite a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, but it was like kind of like middle to the end of 2014. I started my business in 2014. So I technically started my business first in 2014. Like, got my business license and everything in 2014, and then several months into it of watching videos and researching and all that, that's when I decided I want to be part of the community over the summer, and started, actually, like, first I had to get like a YouTube account so I could like subscribe and like and comment on these other videos. So I had that, and then I was like, all right, well, now I want to, can I just upload my own videos? How do I do that? I figured that out, and it was really basic back then. I mean, it's still pretty user friendly now, but I mean, there's so much more that YouTube has done that you can do.
Yeah.
But they, at any rate, I just was like, all right, let me customize this, make it look like it's an actual channel, like put my face or something. So when people see my comment, it doesn't just have that like generic, like, oh, this is just some random, viewer commenting. Like, it looks like a legit, oh, let me click on this and see what this dude's doing, like, and that helped me grow a little following, things like that. But so, I had been on YouTube not long enough, I guess, that a lot of people knew who I was, and there wasn't that many people even on YouTube yet anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, so like a couple of thousand subscribers, at the time 9 years ago was pretty epic. People were like, oh
Right.
my gosh, now it's like 200. Well, no one's got 200,000, but like now like 20,000 is like, wow, that's pretty good. Or 100,000. There's several people now that started way back then that are now up to 100,000 and more subscribers. So because they've just been hitting it hard and have a lot of great content. I've been kind of sporadic and all over it, but for me, it's been all about connecting with the community. It's like a tool. It's a platform for
Yeah.
me to communicate my message, help share what I learn, and entertain at the same time, have a good time. And then it helps me connect with folks when I go to these different places and promote these different events as well. So it's just an all around great tool and resource for me to connect to the community, along with all the other like podcasting and other social media, avenues. So, but when I went there for the first time, and people knew who I was, and some people came up to me, two different people came up to me and shook my hand separately and told me their story. One person had tears in their eyes, two men, and they shared their story of how they left their 9 to 5 corporate America job, to start their lawn care business, and they haven't looked back. It's been the best thing ever, and they thanked me because I was one of the people that helped inspire them to do that with my
That's
content,
powerful. Yeah.
because that's what I did. So that like really hit me. Like it's
Hmm.
one thing to have a bunch of views, likes, and comments. Like, that's obviously awesome and humbling, and keeps you going. But when you go face to face and someone literally comes up to you and tells you that, from someone that they've been watching your videos and all that, and whether they commented or not, whether you knew who they were or not from the usernames, it doesn't matter. As soon as you see them in person, you have that connection, that energy, and that conversation. It's a whole another level. Like, it's
Yeah.
nothing, you can't even explain it. You just have to experience it, as
Super
you know
fulfilling.
yourself. Yeah.
Just, I mean, slightly. I mean, I'm from, I think we talked about this when I was on your show, but I'm from like the backwoods of Alabama. Like, nobody knows your name out there, And then when
Yeah.
I started getting on, I've largely only, had connections with Paul Jameson and a few others. But yeah, just going to lawn care life, I've only been to a few events, but people know me there, and it's just crazy. I never would have
Yeah.
expected that. And it is powerful, people saying that, hey, I really thought about what you said the other day on the show, and it really influenced me. And that's, I don't know, it's just really fulfilling.
100%. So, and it's hard. Like I said, it's hard to explain. You
Hmm.
just have to
It is.
experience it. And
Yeah.
whether you have any level of influence because you're creating content or not, just being an attendee at these events, and just being around so many like-minded people and having these
Yeah.
conversations it's so much more powerful than this kind of a conversation. Like
Yeah.
this is the next best thing, but meeting in person, that's where it's all about, what it's all about. And that really struck me, and I did not want to see that die. And that's why when the following year, or kind of the tail end of that year, when I got wind of certain people kind of doing different things, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't want this to stop. And that's why I kind of took over a little bit and rallied the troops that were left at the time, and just kept propelling that growth, fostering that growth, and finding more opportunities to create more events. Because quickly the rally got so big. Partially one of my inner circle members and good friends to this day, he had said way back then, like, the rally's awesome and everything, but like it's kind of getting big. Like it's really hard. Sometimes you don't even know if someone was there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, they were there. I didn't even know. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to be able to shake everyone's hand,
Yeah.
and meet them up, which is the whole point of the rally. But it's so big now, it's tricky. So, and they
Yeah.
were like, it'd be cool if there was like some smaller event or smaller events, or like a round table, or you can just kind of hang out and ask
Yeah.
questions or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can that ever be sustainable? Like just like organically everything grows in our community because everyone
Yeah.
wants to be a part of it. But I tried, right? I'm like, well, let me. So I just kept creating these different things, and they all blow up as well. So there's just all these different events now, four to be exact, that four that are consistent, that I have right now. Like there's a couple other ones, like a podcast summit and things that I did for a couple of years there that were kind of bridging the gap for different things and trying some stuff out. But for the most part, have the same, stick with the same track record that, I still have the rally, still helping with that, and then creating new things, and just continuing, just rinsing and repeating, as Paul would say. It's like, okay, that worked, rinse and repeat, and just keep doing it. Just, different times of the year, different places, to just keep giving as many opportunities as possible for this community to gather and grow together. And that's all under the LCR Media umbrella, including all the content, because I just really enjoy community. It's just
I
something
can
that
tell just
I
like,
desire.
yeah, when I just when you're talking about it, I can just see it from your expression. You're just lighting up
Yeah.
about it. It's very
Yeah.
fascinating. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious about, it seems like you came from really humble beginnings. I'm really curious about, you talk about your retail past and everything. I want to know what you did before lawn care, like, because a lot of times that's what creates the entrepreneur, is like the sum of everything that you did before. And so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I did mention, I was an only child, single mom, and on top of that, only child, single mom. So I didn't have the only child spoiled syndrome, because I didn't have two parents spoiling me. So that's I didn't have that. My wife's always like, "You're the only non-spoiled only child." I was like, "That's because I had one parent." So there's only so much spoiling that can be done there when
Right, right.
when she's working 2, 3, 4 shifts to try and
Yeah.
make ends meet, and we're still on food stamps and
Hmm.
government assistance and all this stuff. So I came from similar humble beginnings like that as a lot of folks that I've talked to in this industry, and just in life in general. My father wasn't in the picture, unfortunately, and I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of issues that I'm sure revolve around all that kind of stuff. And I just never, I was alone a lot, like, cause my mother was always working, and I had extended family, like cousins and aunts and uncles, but they weren't close. They were like 45 minutes to an hour away, or further. So it's not like it was anything that I could just go hang out. It had to be like a trip, my
Hmm.
mother had to be off of work. It was like a whole big thing. And it was usually just like holidays and things, like special occasions. You know what I mean? So, so that it was just me by myself. So there was that. And then I learned, this is kind of something that goes full circle to my lawn care business, is like, I learned, because I came from such humble beginnings and had nothing, came from nothing, had nothing. I don't want to say came from nothing, right? That's something that I guess I've heard people say before, but that's probably discounting, like all the hard work my mother did,
Yeah.
and all of the things, in life get you to where you are now. So, but it was definitely humble beginnings. I didn't really have much, and I didn't come from much. But what I did do was learn a lot from that. Like I only had one pair of sneakers a year, like on my, or athletic shoes, whatever, whoever's listening to, what do they want to call them. But I'm from up north. I'm from New York State. So originally that's where I was born and raised. So we say sneakers, but down here in the South, here in Virginia, they say tennis shoes. I'm like, no, that's a type of sneaker, tennis shoes. That's to play tennis in. You don't categorize every single sneaker as a tennis shoe. But anyway,
Is Virginia a southern state or a northern state? I know
it's
they
technically
claim southern, but I'm just like, you
yeah.
guys are far up there, man. Because I'm from
Yeah.
freaking Lower Alabama, so
Yeah, no. Well, you guys are clearly southern and south, but Virginia is technically south. I mean,
yeah, yeah. I'm just making a
I
joke.
know,
But
I know, I know, I know. But there's a lot of northerners here for sure. But it's a good mix. They call it a swing state for a reason. We're in the transition zone for grass, different types of grass, as well as the mix of people. It's a melting pot here. But at any rate, I had one pair of sneakers every year that I got on my birthday that my aunt, my godmother, she would buy me a new pair and she'd buy me whatever I wanted. So I really thought long and hard, like what was the hottest, coolest, whether it was Jordans or Robinsons or this or that, like what am I going to get? Right. And then I would take care of them and make them last. Like if they were all white, like that was crazy. Right. And I had to make them last all year long because that was the only pair I was going to get. So I kept them looking crispy, cleaned them, take care of them, was careful not to run in the mud or anything like that. So that kind of, two things. One made me not good with sharing because I never had anyone to share anything with. And I was also paranoid that if I shared anything and someone broke it, then that was it. I don't have another one. I can't replace it. I'm done,
yeah,
or someone loses it or whatever. So that made me very protective of my things. But it also made me take care of my things as well. So going to my lawn care business, all my equipment lasts so long and is taken care of really well. And then when I start getting employees and everything, I'm like, oh man, because they don't obviously treat anything the way that you
right.
want to, that you treat it and all that. So that made me think of a lot more things of different, checks and balances and following up and setting standards and accountability and all that. But, all my stuff lasts a long time and is well maintained because of my ingrown, like my, default wiring from those humble beginnings. But yeah, I mean, so like between there and here, like I said, I was in retail management. Like that's really the only job I ever had. Like I when I was in high school, I worked part-time at a couple of different, retailers. And then when I went to college or right before college or something like that, it might've been the summer of either I was going into college or it was like the summer after my first year, but it was definitely summer and I was going to college that next year. And I was just dropping off applications in the mall, just like, most kids, teenagers, young adults do. And somebody actually pre-screened me and, they I guess liked what they heard and they brought me in for an interview. But then when they realized that I was going to college, they were not so happy about that. And they're like, yeah, we need someone that's going to be here past the summer. So somehow or another, this again carries into now and how one of the many reasons why I'm able to network so well with brands and other content creators and just you and everyone in general, why networking is just a skill that I have. It's partially my natural talent, but also like I was born with a gift, but it's also a skill that I developed my entire life. And right at that moment, this is the earliest, I'm sure as a kid, I did some sort of networking, things, that I don't remember. But this is the first time I remember actually utilizing like some epic, persuasion, networking. It wasn't so much networking, but it all kind of led into the same thing, but just really like persuasion and convincing and taking advantage of maybe of an opportunity and just being persistent or whatever. I don't know what the right word to tie in is, but I said in the interview, well, I'm going to be going to college, but this store is going to, it's a nationwide store. There's one at the mall right where I go to college. So do you guys do transfers? Like maybe I can transfer there and then I can transfer back for the holidays and then transfer back, I can go back and forth. So I'll always be here during the peak times, right? Because I'm off of school for the summer peak time. I'm off of school for the holiday peak time, and the off peak time, I'll be at the other store while I'm at school and I'll continually be getting trained. So it's one less person you have to hire and train. I will keep learning everything and I'll master everything. I'm a quick learner. You won't regret it. All this stuff. Like I had this epic speech and they hired me. And the rest is history because I grew through that company in college and became a manager and all that stuff with that company. There's tons of leadership training that company provided. And it really helped me in those early days. And I remember I went back to that to that pitch to them to get for them to hire me when there was someone else that they were contemplating hiring. And I don't remember if they were a friend of mine or I just had a really good feeling and vibe, and maybe as part of the interview or something. And they were like, oh yeah, we really like him, but he's going to be going to college. And I'm like, remember what you guys did for me? Remember, like, you didn't regret that decision, right? Why don't we give this guy a shot too? And I don't remember unfortunately the story with that, but I know they listened to me and they gave him a shot, and I'm sure he worked out, but I don't know how that might have evolved, but probably not like me going into the management and all that. But that's what kind of got me catapulted into that. And I truly enjoyed some aspects of retail management. I enjoyed the management aspect of it. I was identified early on of having leadership skills and characteristics. And then that got developed through training, with my peers and the classes that they would ship us off to, throughout the districts and things like that, and regional and all that. Like, they put a lot of effort into making this is like probably like 20 years ago, they made their managers really, I don't even think they do that nowadays. Like, who cares, right? It's a crazy world now in retail, but back then brick and mortar was what it was. Where it was at. There was no Amazon. There was nothing like that. It was
Yeah.
just, there was e-commerce, but it was like eBay and random stuff like that. It was not like it is now. So it was all about brick and mortar. So everyone invested so much into that to make sure they got as much traffic into the stores and converted that traffic, and the stores looked amazing and the staff was amazing. And so they put a lot of time. The HR was like one of the top, departments that's got a lot of money invested in. And then little by little, that just dwindled down to like, HR, what is that? Like, we don't
Yeah.
need to spend money on recruiting and training and all that. Like, what? So I was lucky to learn a lot of things in the beginning stages there, when it was really a prime time where that was a focus. And that really just set me up, I think, for everything, from all the way up till now, all that leadership training and management style. So I enjoyed the leading and the managing, the training. I wasn't so good at recruiting, but I was really good at interviewing and identifying people's strengths and weaknesses and where they might be good and if they might be good. Like, literally, I also kind of have like a natural intuition that is a little bit more in tune than the average person. And I can just meet someone and get an energy, a vibe from them, and know a lot of things about them. So that really helps when you are interviewing someone for a job. Even to this day, when I'm interviewing people for my lawn care business, it's just something that I just kind of interview them as a formality, because like, literally, as soon as I meet them, shake their hand and say one thing to them and listen to their response, I immediately
Yeah.
feel all of that energy. And like, I want to just say, okay, we're done here. But I mean, like,
Right. Right. Yeah.
I got to be professional. Right. And but I go through the short list, I don't go page after
Yeah.
page
No,
of
I
all
get
this
it.
stuff, and I shorten it up. So those are the kind of things that I enjoyed because I was good at them. It was natural to me. But I didn't like the hours. I didn't like all the crazy back and forth hours and late nights and early mornings and back to back and weekends all the time and working all the holidays. Like, I didn't like the quality of life that provided. Like,
Yeah.
as I met my wife and we wanted to have a family and all that, it just became not very conducive for me. Like, my
Yeah.
life was going one way, retail was going another way, Amazon was taking over, all that stuff was getting crazy, and everyone's trying to compete. Brick and mortar stores are trying to like survive at that point, and figure out their online stuff, and putting all this extra pressure on the stores and all these new metrics that we have to meet. And it was just getting crazy. And working on Thanksgiving, I'm like, what in the world is happening to the world? Like, I want to have a life. So
Right.
that's where it got really, really rough. And then obviously all the nasty customers that you deal with all day,
Yeah.
every day. So that really wore on me, for sure. And it really broke me down because, my marriage, my relationship with my kids, like my health, I was sick all the time. Like, physically, I would, like, multiple times a year, I'd get like bronchitis, ear infection. One year I got, pneumonia, and I was just like, what in the world? And yeah, I was, they got the flu a couple times, like, everything, all the different things that you can get, like with like a head cold, chest, all the things that turn into bad stuff, all that bacteria, I would get it all the time. And it was terrible because I was just always exhausted and depressed. And I just had to figure something out, and I loved lawn care as a homeowner. Like, I just kind of figured that out on my own because I didn't have a choice. Like, we got a house, not this one here, but up in, up in New York State, and we got a house, first time homeowners, and I'm just trying to figure it out. Like, we didn't have any sod planted anywhere. They didn't do anything. They just, I don't even know here. That's not a thing, but like up there, whatever that was 20 years ago or something, maybe, that 15 years ago, whatever it was a thing. Like they just built the house and everything is just left the way it is. Like, of course it's all graded out and cleaned up, but, and driveways put in, gravel driveway, but there's like no grass. So I had to figure all of that out from scratch. And there was no real internet stuff. There was nobody on YouTube at that point saying any of this stuff. There was a little bit of Facebook, but nothing really, like there was no lawn care groups or nothing like that. It was super early days. And I'm like, what do I do? So I'm just going to like the big box stores, finding like their little books on things and reading about gardening and different types of lawns and all that stuff, finding all the gadgets and gizmos and trinkets and whatever.
Yeah. So you're doing this simultaneously as you're getting out of retail. How long did you do retail for? You did it a long time, right?
I was in retail for 15 years.
15 years. And so you're doing your side hustle with lawn care as you're transitioning out of it?
No, I was a homeowner while I was doing that. And then I transitioned for 1 year, like all this stuff that I'm saying, like books and all that. That was before I found, before YouTube was a thing.
Gotcha.
That was just like me, like as a homeowner, like falling in love with grass.
Gotcha. Okay.
And just kind of doing that and just kind of becoming like that guy in the neighborhood that had like the best lawn, and that's kind of what like propelled me into when I finally got to the point, like however many years later that was, probably like 3 or 4 years, and we moved down here to Virginia. And I was just like so burnt out, and I'm like, I need to start over. I need to press the hard reset button on my life and start over. And I don't know what else to do but get into lawn care. Like that would be awesome if like I could start a lawn care business. And at that point now it seemed like it was a doable thing, because that's when people started driving around with a truck and trailer mowing lawns. You didn't have to be this big, massive landscape company that did everything, because that was intimidating to me to have to build something like that. But it started 10 years ago, started to become the time where you could have specialized services. There was just fertilization and weed control only companies. There was guys just out there cutting grass and doing other miscellaneous landscaping, in addition to the traditional big, companies. So I'm like, okay. So that's when the transition for 1 year, I started part-time doing some lawns, like six lawns part-time, while I was working like 50, 60 hours in retail
but that's
management.
That's like 3 years after the homeowner thing that you were talking about. Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and which was 10 years ago when I 11 years ago is when I started part-time, right? I had like 6 customers, and I was literally in retail, and I would put my push mower and a hand blower and hand trimmer in the back of my Jeep Compass and a change of clothes, and I would work my guts out all day and try and leave before dark so I can change in my office, run downstairs, get in my Jeep, and go try and bang out at least 1 yard before dark. And then like on my days off, I would try to squeeze in the rest of them. And it wasn't that many yards, I think 5 or 6 yards, but I only had a 21-inch mower, and these were all like 10,000 square foot yards, and it took a little while to push mow all those and trim and edge. And I was very meticulous because I'm treating them like they're my house, and everything. And but I saw the potential. I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, imagine if I had all the time in the world to just do this full time. I could really make something of this. Like, I'm doing my own thing. I don't have people screaming on me. I don't have to deal with all the nonsense. I don't have to babysit employees right now. Like, I'm living the dream. I'm out in the fresh air. I've always been an outdoor person. My wife and I, our kids now as well, we love being outside doing things. Which is one of the reasons why we moved down to Virginia, because up in New York, it's either hot or cold, and that's really it. There's not a whole lot of changes in between there, and it's mainly cold. So we wanted to go somewhere where there was 4 seasons and like a good chunk of time for those 4 seasons. So Virginia was kind of like, Florida was a little bit too far. I wanted to move to Florida, but my wife's like, yeah, it's a little too far and too hot all the time. How about we find something in the transition zone like Virginia or the Carolinas? So that's kind of that brief backstory there. But so, it was great because I was outside mowing lawns, doing my own thing, being my own boss, not having to deal with all like the headaches that I had to deal with. But it was a grind because I was still doing retail management at the time. So that's when 10 years ago, which was a year after part-time, I was like, okay, I'm done. I just put in my 2 weeks notice right around the holidays, and then went all in and figured out how to make it work that whole winter, like a couple of months, like January, February, there wasn't really anything going on. And I took the money that all the vacation time that I never got to use because it accumulated all the time.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the company that I left pays you out your vacation versus like you use it or you lose it, like some other companies I worked for in the past. And you always knew when people were going to quit because all of a sudden they'd start requesting all this time off. We're like,
Right. But, so you had 2 months to kind of kickstart your business is basically what you're saying. Did you have any savings at the time when you started too?
No, it was, well, my wife had a full-time job, which was extremely helpful. I probably wouldn't have been able to do what I did without that. But like I said, all the vacation time they paid out, and it was almost 2 months worth of salary. That's how much vacation time I had that I wasn't able to use because every weekend was like a blackout date, a made up holiday, a big sale, and every other manager is trying to get it off. And it was just one of the many things that made my quality of life not the best. So I had all this vacation time that just got paid to me. And so we had almost 2 months worth of my salary. So that gave me the ability to not be so stressed out about finances, but so I could go, full on, like, how do I generate money? And that first few months, AK also the whole first year, but those first few months, literally, I did so many strategic things and stumbled upon so many things and found some people on the internet and did this and did that. So many things that I teach to this day. You actually heard one of my secrets at Jason's event. When I did a route density presentation, and
Right.
one of the things that I did was literally like month one or month two, I think it was either January, it was February, because I remember we went on vacation. We had a vacation to Universal Studios playing with the family, and I'm sitting at the pool, and my phone's just going off, ding, ba-ding, ba-ding, or cha-ching, cha-ching, getting all these notifications from an event that I, put out and everything. And I came back from vacation, and I was just bogged, down with all this work, and it catapulted my business with route density, and like being all in the same neighborhood and getting all these regular clients off of this miscellaneous stuff that I was doing, or this one particular service that I was offering, for all of them. And I just really hit the ground running. I was so afraid to fail. Like, I couldn't fail. Like, I'm like, okay, I just quit, like, I have a little bit of money here, and my wife's got a full-time job, but her full-time job is not enough for both of our, my salary was enough for both. So hers was like extra. So we were like kind of starting to live the dream
Yeah.
financially, but I was like dying inside, So
Yeah.
I'm like,
No,
this is
I get
not,
it.
we gotta go backwards to go forward sometimes,
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of how all that worked out. And it's just been, it's been all fun times ever since then. And we're back to where we started
So
the
I'm
conversation.
curious. A lot of guys talk about work-life balance, and I think you could even take it deeper than that. Like, I want you to compare and contrast yourself as a husband and father when you were in retail compared to as an entrepreneur, because it's like you're basically just as busy, right? But it makes you act. I feel like it actualizes you into a more full person. So, what do you think the
Right.
difference is there? Like, do you feel like you're a better husband and father today, being in control of your own destiny relative to being in retail,
Uh,
15 years
yeah.
ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've just recently said this on one of my podcast episodes. I said, it seems kind of counterintuitive to people that don't understand from the outside looking in when you say, I quit my I quit my full-time job to start my own business so I could have a better quality of life and have more time, and all that. And it's like, huh, that doesn't make any sense. You started your own business to have more time. Well, I'll say a couple of sound bites that will bring this all home. Like, my first couple of years in of my lawn care business, yes, I had, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Of course there's stress, right? Of course there's ups and downs. It's raining, all these things. Customers complain sometimes about stuff that's out of your control, or they're just nitpicky or whatever. Like, there's going to be those issues, right? And but I don't remember what was said before this, but we were taking a car ride, and somebody, not like, it wasn't like my wife or my kids, it might have been my mother-in-law or something, was in the car with us, and we were going wherever, somewhere, get something to eat or something together. And maybe she or whoever was with us said something about that, like about the stress, or, oh man, you must be so stressed, or isn't it stressful running your own business, something along those lines, right? And my daughter, who was a lot younger, obviously, that was 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, it was like first year or two into my business. um, so she was really young. She said, "It's not the same, Grandma. It's not the same stress. It's his stress. Like, it's from his business. He can kind of control that stress. It's not like stress from the outside or from a boss or whatever." Like, she said, it's so much more articulate for a young, adolescent girl, daughter.
Yeah.
She said it perfectly, and my wife and I were just like, it was like just like silent after she said that. We were just like, wow, that was
Kids
epic. I
drop some
wish I
bombs
record.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I wish I recorded that, man. But she said it. The concept makes total sense, right? Like, there's no bosses breathing down my throat. Bosses, bosses, bosses. It's not the office, space or whatever, or the office, show or Office Space movie, all these things. It's not like that where you have TPS reports and all these bosses and everybody just breathing down your throat and getting on you all the time. And
Bird dogging, yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah. And like, nasty customers, like, guess what? If I have a nasty customer, I just fire them. Like,
Yeah.
that's it, point blank. Like, I'm not going to tolerate with that. I had to smile and wave, as I got, treated like garbage all the time in retail by, of course, if customers got a line of retail, I could kick them out as well. Like if they're using bad language and whatever. And, hey, this is a family establishment. You need to leave, like things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But those were extreme levels. But if there's just customers rub me the wrong way, or they're not paying, or they're slow paying, or whatever, they just don't fit the criteria of my business. Guess what? We're not the right fit for each other any longer. Sorry, goodbye. So, I mean, you have a lot more control of your business in some ways. Of course, you can't control the weather. You can't control things break sometimes and blah, blah, blah. Like there's a lot of uncontrollable things, of course, and there's still stress, but it's totally different. And I make my own schedule. I make my own hours. So a couple of the things, I haven't been sick I haven't been sick for 10 years since I quit. I mean, I got COVID apparently, but I was taking care of my whole family that was like dying basically from COVID. They were so sick, and I took the test and it said I was positive, and I just felt like I had a sniffle. So I'm taking care of my whole family, like, oh man. And I attribute that to the fact that my immune system got stronger because I'm in the fresh air all the time, and I'm happier, and I'm getting more
Right.
sleep, and I'm not
Yeah.
stressed beyond all relief.
Uh-huh. Man, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the way you're supposed to live with some, with a certain level of autonomy,
Right.
And yeah, I
Exactly.
don't think people realize how much control society has over them working just a basic job. And so that's like one of my biggest things selling people. I think everybody should start a business personally. Maybe everybody doesn't agree with that, but I think everybody eventually should start a business. And it's like, that's just one of many things, it's the
Yeah.
way I feel like it's supposed to be. It's almost like when you have a 9 to 5, it's almost like being in debt. It's like there's still something controlling your life. You always have to ask off permission to do all these different things.
Right.
Whereas with the business, it's more, I have a responsibility to everyone to do this. It's not that I need to ask permission. It's just I have a responsibility, and this is a completely different thing, a different human experience.
Right. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And a great example of this, hashtag not sponsored, right? But if you watch the B movie, Jerry Seinfeld's animated the B movie, if you watch
Yeah.
the B movie, it's exactly what you said. It's like, it's the best metaphor for our life. It's like we are all worker bees. And I can't just watch the movie and you'll be like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you will
I
never,
watched it a long time
yeah.
ago. Yeah.
But did you get that? Because there's people that have watched the B movie, and I told them like different things about it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to watch it again. I think my whole life has been a lie. Like I never even thought about it like that. Like it's literally like the B movie is all about capitalism. Like it's literally America,
I need to
like
rewatch it. It's been a long time.
yeah.
It's
Rewatch
funny.
it and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what we were talking about. That's crazy.
Yeah. At this point, I just think of myself getting continually red pilled on everything, like kind of hashtag matrix, like,
Yeah.
but it's crazy how many different red pills. Like, I feel like I'm finally like completely out of the matrix. I've had a little bit of a journey, but I'm just completely out now at this point. And I don't know. It's just that I think every entrepreneur goes through that, but
Yeah, for sure. And then,
it's
but
funny.
the other thing was that I've gone on more field trips. Like the first 2 years in business, I went on more field trips with my kids than I did the whole rest of their life. I mean, their life previous to that. It just because I had so much flexibility. Like I could just rearrange my schedule however I wanted. I didn't have I was, like I didn't start out with like, 80 lawns and, all these employees. Like I started by myself and I built my way up. I quickly got to the point where I was almost replacing my retail management income, and my wife had her full-time job, like I said. So it really gave me a lot more flexibility to really just fully make this work. And it just made everything better. All the things that I just said. And obviously my relationships in life, my wife, my kids, everything improved. And the one thing my wife said, the first year or two in, we were out at dinner together, and she was like, you just weren't present before, and now you're present. So that is sums it all up right
That's
there,
awesome.
So there you go.
I love it. So Naylor, I know you're the self-proclaimed route density king. What we touched on this a little bit. What's the key to like the best route density? Like if you could just sum it up in a sentence or whatever, like you don't have to sum it up, but like if you could just say this is what causes it, and you can extrapolate out on that. But like is it your ability to have relationships, networking? Like what do you think is your secret sauce for that?
Well, honestly, ultimately, like I said at Jason's event, the biggest thing is that I, by default, wanted to get control of my time. That was my number one objective, like leaving retail and starting my own business, was to actually, and like I said, people might think that's counterintuitive, but when you're your own boss, you can, if you don't want to work a weekend, then don't work a weekend. If you have to, you have to, but you don't really ever have to. Literally, there's times where I have said I'm going to work on a Saturday because I didn't get stuff done, like because of the weather or whatever. I wasn't able to get stuff done, or I've said, or we have stuff to do on a Saturday, and I'm like, you know what? I just tell those people, hey, I'm going to push you to Monday. Sorry. Either way, the same thing happens. Like the work still gets done, just either Saturday or Monday, and it was my decision ultimately, and so why, so I think to myself sometimes, why do I wait for, us to have plans on a Saturday for me to not work on a Saturday to get caught up and just push something to a Monday? Like there's always pros and cons to all of that. And a lot of times it's because I took a Wednesday off to move our one of our kids in or out of college, or graduation, or this or that. Like there's a lot of personal things that I'm able to do, in life, because of the fact that I'm in control. So that was my number one objective. And by default, to not work weekends anymore and to not work nights, and but to try and get as much work done as possible, try and make as much money. I quickly realized within that first year, because I was going everywhere. I was driving all over the place, just taking on whatever work I could, putting my name out there all over Facebook, doing all types of things, and, friends of friends and neighbors and here and there, Facebook's got, Facebook, like someone local, okay, customer, but they have a friend, a neighbor, whatever, somewhere else in town, 25 minutes away. And you just end up, one time getting gas, like on the outskirts of like the 25 minute trip, I'm getting gas. And then someone, hey, can you give me a quote? And they're another 10 minutes away. And I'm like, oh my God, so, but I'm like, oh yeah. Like, cause at the time I'm thinking it's work, it's business. Right. So like but then I realized I could only get so much stuff done. I was always getting home after dark, and then having to work on weekends anyway. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, so I quickly realized that even though I had those hard, like, principles, like, that I didn't want to break, like I didn't want to work weekends, I didn't want to work nights and things like that. I was quickly breaking those because I was all over the place and just didn't have enough time to get everything done. So I'm like, I need to get this work condensed. I need to work closer to home. I didn't even know the term route density even existed yet. I was just figuring that out on my own quickly by default, because I knew that
Interesting.
it wasn't acceptable to me. And I think everyone else typically just thinks that that's the only way, and like that's okay. But because, so had I not been in the situation where I was in retail management and all that, and I quit, and I was trying to, and my sole goal, my most top priority, was to get my time back to spend with my family and to get sleep and all that. If I didn't have that as my goal, like if I just was, grew up working in this industry, or, family business, or whatever odd jobs I was doing, and just kind of fell into this or whatever, everyone's got their own story. I might not have gotten into route density as quickly or at all as I did. So I
That's
think
so good.
yeah. So I think I
Yeah.
had that urge, and that like, nature, that, the environment that made me really figure this out quickly.
That's I talked about this with Payjack a couple hours ago, but basically that's very similar to like doing the profit first system in your business, like where you take the profit first and then you build the company around it. Well, what you're doing is
Yep.
you're taking your family first and you're building your company around your family. And so it's you can do the
Exactly.
exact same thing, and people don't realize that, but it works
I
because
love that.
that's a very similar thing that me and Megan have done. We've always had time, like even from day one. I think it's helped having two of us build the business, but that's something that we've always valued is time with our family and kids, and things like that. So the
Yeah.
company's just naturally always given us a lot of freedom, and we've still been able to grow within that. It grows a little slower, but the goal isn't a fast growing company. It's to have your time back, and some freedom. So I really, really like that. Now,
Yeah.
if you are looking at, there's probably some neighborhoods you can look at and you'll never get good route density in them. So like, how do you identify the neighborhoods that you can get, good route density in, before you even, like, I want to work in that neighborhood or whatever. How do you get into that? How do you analyze it and realize the ones that, aren't really worth your time? Or do you even think about something like that?
I do. I think about all that. And honestly, there's no, I mean, I could probably figure that out and come up with some things for that to answer that question, those questions. But ultimately what ends up happening, what I've done over time is I will, using those things that I could go into, but there's a better question to ask that I'll answer. But I will say that I have tried going into different neighborhoods, and I always try different neighborhoods just so that I don't, at some point I kind of oversaturate a neighborhood. You're like, all right, well, let me move on to another one, no one, whatever. And, there's a lot of ways to see potential. You're getting a lot of calls, emails, whatever, from different neighborhoods that are close by, or maybe they're far away. And you're like, okay, well, if I get enough in there, then maybe it might be worth it. I can spend a half a day or a day in one neighborhood, and that's fine. So I've done that plenty of times over the last 10 years. And the thing is, I just make sure that when that doesn't happen, like if I get in there for a couple of yards and I never grow past that, no matter how hard I try, how much marketing, how much referral bonuses incentives I give my current clients to try and promote, my business to get more and all that, um, it's just dead for me. I need to cut that off and go back to staying tight in my tight route that I have. I can't waste my time anymore driving out to this one neighborhood hoping that it's going to grow. So I think that the better question to ask is, what are the what can you do to achieve route density? That's a better way to frame it for me anyway, because that's how I think. And what I'm going to be teaching in October, or this is October, in a couple of weeks at the LCR Summit, is the 4 moves that you can make for route density, to achieve route density. And it's in this order: it's say no, raise prices, branding, and target marketing. So like saying no. So, like say, you're way out here and you have all these houses out here, but you want to be way over here because that's where your family is, or just closer to your family. Whether we're not even talking about if it's like a high maintenance, like super expensive neighborhoods, a lot of profit, whatever. Like, we're not even talking about that. We're talking about route density and how to stay closer to what's important to you. If your family or whatever is important to you, then try and stay close to that. Work close to that. I do know people that live way out here and there's not a lot of work out here. So they spend the day out over here working here, but they had to build all that up. It's not like they're going back and forth and all over the
Yeah.
place. So for me and for most folks who, live live around neighborhoods, and they're not just all out in the middle of nowhere in the country, driving all over town out here, you just say no and start cutting that off. And then you start working your way back over here. And the more you say no, the less you get caught up out there, because once you get caught up out there, then another person wants you out there, and you think you're living the dream because you're making all this money, but you're not making near as much money as if you just stayed here.
Mm-hmm.
And then a way to help you with saying no is to raise your prices, right? Like, you don't want to work out here, so keep raising your prices, because it's going to take you longer to get out there. Your gas is going to go up, all these things, your payroll, if you have employees, to be sitting in the truck driving out there, blah, blah, blah. So raise your prices to, account for the fact, all those things that I just said, and you're going to be driving out there. That's going to help people say no automatically. So the say no is you saying no, and raising your prices is going to make them say no. So then you just start working your way back, right? And then after, I say in this order, because after those 2 things and you get away from here out there and you start working this way, then you focus on your branding, so that all these people over here that are closer to where you want to be can see you know, like, love you, and they think of only you when they want lawn care services, because your branding, you have your logos, you've got uniform shirts, you got clean equipment, you do a great job, you're everywhere, right? People say it to me all the time. I see you guys everywhere. I see your trucks everywhere. I'm like, okay, we only have one truck, one trailer, but we're just everywhere in the same area constantly. We're in one neighborhood multiple days because we have, 20 to 30 yards, so it takes more than one day. So you start to generate that kind of, vibe and word of mouth and perception for your ideal clients in the neighborhoods that you want to be close to you. And then target marketing is the final part to keep growing that route density. Like, I literally we would go during the slower times of the year. And then of course you probably heard about like 5 rounds and all 9 rounds, all these different terms where you can, you mow the yard that you're on, then you just go around, 2 on either side, 2 across the street, whatever, around the corner. And you just put business cards or flyers or postcards or door hangers or whatever your marketing is, around there to try and keep advertising that your service is there, because sometimes they're not even home and never even see you. So they might not, you can't assume that they see you there all the time, like the neighbors and all that, because they may just come home and they see their neighbor's yard is cut and they have no idea who did it. And maybe they're not friends and not going to talk to them. So you marketing constantly, oh, that's who's doing it. You know what? I need someone, and they contact you. So then that's where you really focus on the target marketing, not like just sending out zip code mailers or Facebooking the whole world. Or, I mean, you can dial in Facebook for certain zip codes, which is really good,
Yeah.
really good, and focus on certain neighborhoods and all of that. But I'm talking, that's part of target marketing as well. So that's just anything that you can do to focus on the target market that you want, the target neighborhoods is what I mean. And however you do that, door to door, Facebook targeting, all those things, versus just throwing out a huge net and just grabbing whatever you can and then trying to go through this list of 4 moves and constantly sorting it out. Like, no, you start with number 1, say no, raise your prices, get your way closer and closer back, then focus on your branding and target marketing. And then you grow this huge route density where, at one point I had almost 100 yards in just 3 neighborhoods, right?
Wow.
I sold one neighborhood that had 26 yards to somebody that wanted to get into that neighborhood. And they've grown double that size since they've been in it. And I'm going to rinse and repeat. There's a new neighborhood that I'm in where I already have like 5, 6, I think we have like 7 yards, and there's a whole another section being built. So next year they'll have all fresh sod that'll be ready to be cut. So my phone will be ringing off the hook again. So, and then I can maybe sell off that neighborhood because it's a little bit further than I want to be. So, because it's just so like automatic for me now, route density, how to build it, how to get into a neighborhood and all that. And like I said, that's kind of, it's a whole another conversation, but that there's a whole another process for that. But basically it comes down to branding and the marketing aspect, right?
Yeah.
That I ended off with those 4 moves to really work on building your route density. So once you get into a neighborhood, then you can just build it up with the branding and the marketing and the word of mouth, and you just keep crushing it. Sometimes it
And
takes a little bit of time and patience, but step 1 is saying no, to give yourself the opportunity to say yes to the right people over here where you want to be, instead of dealing with all this stuff way over here.
yeah, that's good. I like how you build it up and then just kind of sell it off. That's a good strategy. A lot of guys think if they're solo or if they just have one team or whatever, a lot of their company doesn't have value, but the value's in the route density and the client list, right? Like,
Right.
if people will buy that if it's an extra profit stream that they can add on to their existing business. So I think that's
Absolutely.
really good. How much do you think that um, local networking plays into that strategy? Do you do a lot of local networking, or are you largely just networking with other lawn care guys, or do you build a lot of relationships within this route density circle that you're talking about? How much does that influence it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a huge network locally, and I want to believe that it's maybe 50-50, but I mean, a large portion of the networking is because I'm on social media. So people they just know me from social media. They saw a video or something. They're like, hey, are you the guy, whatever, like we'll be at a gas station and people come up to me. I saw your video, like, especially when I'm rolling with the ramp rack setup. It's very unique setup. It's very hard to not notice it, especially if you haven't seen it for the first time, where, we just load all of our equipment up on the truck bed, my big heavy duty Ram 3500 long bed truck, and the big dovetail ramp that comes down so you can ride your mowers up on there or walk them up on there. And you got all your trimmer rack. So it's basically like combining a open utility trailer onto the bed of your truck. You just have to have a nice big heavy duty truck for that. They have got smaller ones for the smaller trucks too, if you're just putting on small little push mowers for a lot of the smaller, like some if you have like a downtown, route or something where you're doing all those little tight little yards with the postage stamp front yard, quick little 21-inch push mow and you're done. And it's hard to navigate with trailers. That's a really good thing to get the ramp rack. The smaller ones or the bigger ones, you can do that. But anyway, it's been super efficient, without pulling a trailer and all those things. But it also is very eye catching, and of course mine is green, which matches my my branding, my green logo, and white truck, and all the things just pop. You got white and green, and our logos are charcoal gray and green, and everything is just all branded, so it's very noticeable. So when you make a YouTube video about it and then someone sees that, they're like, wait a minute, I just literally had a neighbor come out to me years ago when I first started using the ramp rack, and a neighbor of my customer was like, I think I saw you on YouTube, but I saw this setup, right? And I was like, yeah, because there's really not that many people on YouTube with this setup. So, or any really, I think it's just me, and maybe now there's a few, but at that time it was me and Blake, B&B Lawn Care, and that's it. And he wasn't even really using it. He was just demoing it for a video. I was literally using it in my business all day, every day, and all that. So that helps with the networking, right? Because people kind of feel like they know you and they've seen you, and it's like an icebreaker. But there's plenty of people that either they know me and they don't say it, or they just don't. They're just being friendly, that the YouTube thing or social media never comes up in conversation, and we're just like, hey, what's up? Hey, just friendly waves and nods. And after a couple of times you stop and talk and hang out. But, there's a whole lot of steps and process to that. But ultimately, to answer your question, I have a pretty good size network locally as well. And I'll refer them business, they'll refer business to me. And, we help each other out in pinches here and there. Plenty of times when I was solo, I'd ask another solo guy to, help me bang out some yards or do a mulch job, and vice versa. And, we just help each other out. Or, they, because of social media, I do a lot with brands, and they know I'm the Toro guy, and I get a lot of Toro mowers, own a lot of Toro mowers. And so people, hey, can we come over and check them out? And, we'd meet up and they can demo stuff. And, because a lot of times I get things that my dealer doesn't get, or it's just easier to hang out with me and play around with it, make some videos, than to try and figure it out with the dealer and fight with all the other companies, that are trying to do it as well. So there's a lot of fun things that come out of that, right? A lot of getting together. I had a get together at my house a few summers ago, all the Virginia, guys and girls that I had gotten to know through social media. I think it was maybe 15 or 16 of them that came, and we, I was grilling, we just had a good old cookout. Paul Jameson stopped by. He was traveling, doing his podcast tours at the time. So he came, stopped by, he spent the night, not here, but he spent the night in a hotel and then stopped by here and was podcasting all night. It was a fun time. And so that is very important. And, it's tricky for me to explain that, because I know I have an advantage because I'm on social media, which is yet another reason why social media is an advantage, and why we talk about that on the first day of the LCR Summit. Whether you want to be a big influencer or have brand deals or whatever or not, you still need social media to brand your business.
Yep.
Whether you're branding yourself or your business, it's the same thing, that the same rules apply, the same skill sets apply, whether you're making a podcast, a video, pictures, all these things you could be putting on your website, your Facebook, all that stuff, to be B2C, business to customer instead of B2B. You don't have to be B2B like us. I don't do any of this for my customers. My customers sometimes stumble upon my most viewed videos, the ones that get almost 500,000 views or something. Eventually someone's going to stumble upon that, and they're like, hey, yeah. I like the neighbor that's like, hey, I saw you, yep. So I mean, it's bound to happen, but that's not my goal. I'm not doing this for them. I'm not making, but I'm conscious of it. I don't want to be saying anything negative about my customers or anything. So, whether you're B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. You still need to know how to use social media, so you can have a digital online presence, so you can keep up with everything, because that's the way of the world. And all the younger generations that are starting their companies, they're all about it, and they're just going to eclipse you every time
Yep. So
you're
true.
just going to be left in the dust if you don't embrace it. So, and it's just another way of network. That's the whole point of social media originally, right? Was to network, to
Social
connect with
network. Yeah.
people. Yeah, the social network, exactly. So why not use it for that? Like, and all the guys that came, or most of the guys that came to my house, they're not like big influencers or at all. Like they just make content to promote their business. They stumble upon me and Paul and anyone else that's making regular content, and they're like, wow, this is cool. It'd be cool to hang out and get together, so that they know us from watching our content, and we know them from them commenting and, being a part of our network on through our content. But it's not like they're trying to be, any big influencers or get brand deals or anything like that. They just are and wanting to be involved in the community and promote their business. And that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you do that, then you can make more connections locally. Cause of course, there's a lot of people that don't care about that locally. There's tons of people that just give me that stare. I wave, and they just look at me and keep rolling. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever, bud. I don't know what that's about, like,
Yeah. That
so
was
the ones
funny.
that
Funny.
wave, those are the social media people. They're
So
all about it.
me coming from Alabama, like literally everyone does like the hand on the steering wheel. You can do like the one finger wave, the two
Yeah.
finger wave, the four, And
Yeah.
then when I moved, so I've been living in the city, Pensacola, with Megan for 7 years, and like literally nobody ever waves. It's like the weirdest thing. I used to just wave at everybody as they go by, and everybody just acts like you're talking about like what's going
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, that's just a side note, but
No, I know. I hear you.
so do you do much do you do any like the BNI groups or anything? Like the
I
local network
tried.
groups and stuff, or
Yeah, I don't. I was introduced to it early on, and I just didn't really see a benefit for me, because I feel like when you're trying to grow a really big business, then that's good. There's a lot of avenues there. Like if you want to do a lot of big commercial properties, you just want to have,
sure.
a lot of crews. If you just want to grow a big business, then of
It's not
course
very
that.
concentrated though,
Right.
like you're talking about. Okay, that's what I was
Exactly.
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I have purposely not done or really invested much time into, because it takes me away from route density. Like it kind of, so like I've become really good at building route density, and then I became really good realizing that you have to protect route density. And because that ultimately makes you the most profitable in your business and in life, right? You build your business around your family. Like you said, if
Hmm.
that's your goal, if you don't have a family yet, or you don't want one, or whatever the deal is, you're just a solo guy, you're getting a girl and you're getting after it, want to build this, $10 million lawn landscape company, go for it. Of course, these BNIs and all these, route density should still be a thing for your maintenance accounts, so that you're not driving all over town on with one crew for one, like that, one route. Like you should start clustering that all up, so the guys and girls are going to one area, that day, another area that day, whatever, instead of driving all over town in one day. Like you should be smart about it, but at the end of the day, you're trying to grow, right? So you're trying to grow here, and all these different places, so you can just keep growing. And that's where you can do all these different things and have mass marketing, cast a big net. That's just not something that works for me and my model, and a lot of people that listen and watch me, because they're in the same boat. They're solo, or they have a small crew, or they want to get bigger, but they want to do it the right way. They don't want to just throw a net out there and be
Right.
spread too thin and all that.
Yeah.
They want to build little by little from the inside out.
More foundational, like we were talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Now, I do know with the YouTube too, you were talking about how it kind of lets people know you, but it also, I'm sure you know this, it helps with a lot of your Google business listings too. A lot of that stuff's like hyperlinked together. So you'll get a lot of a boost in your Google,
Yeah.
stuff, which is really powerful locally, is getting those reviews and,
Yeah.
getting your
For
listing up there.
sure.
So yeah, that's a
Yeah,
side note
for
too. But
sure. Yeah, like Google and Facebook are my friend for sure. Like like whenever you Google lawn care or my lawn care business's name in my area, like I'm right there at the top, and it's not paid, it's all
yeah.
organic.
Hmm.
I've got all these
Yep.
reviews. I'm always posting stuff. Like I'll post the same thing on Google My Business or whatever it's called now, and Facebook right at the same time. So I don't have to play these games, and just post, I've got a little document in my CRM that I can easily email the Google link and the Facebook link, to everyone to fill out you know, create a review and I'll leave a review, and all that stuff just all works to the SEO, and it just, it just all helps. It's all part of that route density as well. So, but with that being said, being out there in the SEO, a lot of people will just contact me from
Yeah,
other
exactly.
counties and other areas.
Yeah,
So I got to just constantly navigate through that, but that's all part of protecting that route density.
good stuff. Now, how do you I guess absorb information? How do you learn? Are you like a book reader? Are you watch a lot of YouTube? Like what do you how do you do self-development? And has that
Um,
changed since you've done retail? Did you do a lot of self-development when you were in corporate America relative to, doing the media and the lawn care?
Yeah, I didn't really do any self development in retail. I did whatever, like there was a lot of the companies, would invest a lot of money
Yeah.
for development, but it wasn't anything
Was it?
personal. It was to make
Right.
us better managers. So that obviously helped me have a really good foundation, a lot of skills with, with management and leadership and all that. But ultimately, I didn't really do anything on my own. It wasn't until I started my lawn care business that it became really like a journey, right? Like a personal journey for me to heal myself. So there was a lot of business learning, a lot of self-help, books and things like that. I didn't really have a whole lot of time to read. Like I've never been a huge reader. I do like reading for sure. And I have tons of books and I've read tons of books, but I've listened to, you know, a ton more,
Mhm.
I've listened to, hundreds and hundreds of books versus like the dozen that I've maybe read in the last 10 years,
Yeah, that's pretty
because
common in the industry. I I
yeah,
I,
it's
I
just
don't think
hard to
I've
sit
ever
down. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever talked to a guy in lawn care and had a different response than the one you're giving me now.
Yeah. Well, it's just hard for me anyway to just
Yeah,
sit
it makes
down and
total
read a
sense.
book. If we go on vacation, we go camping or something,
Yeah,
I'll grab a book, but it's not like I'm going to finish it. I might,
yeah,
read a chapter or two, and that's about all I have time for. So that
exactly.
those books
Yeah,
will last a long time. I'd much rather listen to
yeah.
podcasts and audiobooks and just consume them within a whole day sometimes, like
Hmm.
if not a couple of days, just listen to a couple hours at a time and then boom, we're done. And I'm also really good at retaining information audibly as
Yeah,
well and visually. Like I love watching videos, but yet again, watching a video, you need to stop and watch the video, right? So I can't mow a lawn and watch a video or drive and watch a video. Like I have to actually sit somewhere and watch a video. So again, it's like but I'll listen to a video. Like if it's not something I need to watch, I'll just press play, stick it in my pocket. If I'm trying to listen to a particular video about something or someone or whatever, I can do that. But it's all about listening, and I can retain that a lot easier as well. Like I can retain the information when I listen to it. I can retain it when I watch it as well. But again, I don't have as much time for that. So
so
yeah.
what are your top three? I have some books that have just totally changed my destination. I love to talk about them on my show. What are the top three books that have influenced you and changed your destination? And it probably almost feels like divine intervention or something like that. What are your top three?
Yeah, well, the very first book that I listened to several times was The Profit First Plan by Mike Michalowicz. That was probably 9 years ago when Stanley Dirt Monkey Genetic had his podcast when no one was even doing podcasts except maybe Julio Tomei up in Canada with the Lawn Care Business Success podcast. But he it was just him and Stanley, and like one of the last interviews that Stanley did was with Mike Michalowicz, and I remember listening to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to get this book, and I listened to the audio book, and I told my wife about the whole concept, and she's like I think we talked about on my podcast, she's a bookkeeper and accounting, finance, minded person and in that profession. So she was all about it. She's like, oh, that's amazing. Let's do it. So we implemented Profit First immediately. And all this time, that's been our thing. And I've recommended that book, that audiobook, whatever, so many times over the years. And he's, revised it, got like a publisher and had to redo it all. I mean, the Profit First has had a long life all this time. It just gets better and better. And he's obviously still doing all kinds of stuff and writing new books. And I listen to all of his books. But the Profit First Plan was definitely the one that was really a game changer for me from a financial standpoint and just a business management, all that. But then it just immersed me into him and all of his books. All of his other books are really good as
Yeah,
well.
they
And
are.
yeah, so it just kind of got me into all that. And then I think it was like the first book I had ever listened to on Audible. Like I think I was just listening to Stan's podcast and music before that. That's it. And
Right.
then I listened to the Profit First Plan, and then I just started finding book after book and just started just going to town binging all these different books. And then since then there's been a lot of great books, but I think since then, like since 9 8 8 9 years ago, whatever it was, like a year or two ago, I finally, like, it had been in my wish list on Audible for a long time, Think and Grow Rich. And I know a lot of folks, read that and listened to that, but I just never had. But I had it on my wish list, or I might have actually bought it and downloaded it, just never got to listen to it. So I finally listened to that like a year or two ago, and I've listened to it probably 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times. I don't know.
Wow.
The more times you listen to it or read it, the more something happens to you. So like, I'll just recommend that, because that's what happened. Every time I listened to it, something else unlocked in my brain, and it took me to a whole nother level, that then took me to another level, that then took me to another level, that then took me to another level. So now I'm at the level where, I go to Myron Golden conferences and get coaching and do all these different things, Russell Brunson, this whole other level of like business mindset and coaching and structure and business and finances and all this stuff that's like high level things. And like, their conferences and live events are like epic. So like, it helps me process like how I can make my events better. And instead of what else am I going to, I'm comparing to what little bit we have in our industry, we can only go so high. But once I go outside of the
Exactly.
industry and I start seeing all what's possible, now I can bring that back and take us to a whole nother level.
That's
So
good.
so it's just been this whole crazy journey that I've been doing on. And like the last book that I read, I haven't finished reading it, but I mean, I pretty much know all the concepts from all the coaching. But Myron Golden's new book, his latest book, is called Boss Moves, BOSS, Boss Moves. It's an acronym, but and that's also a very good book. So I recommend that as well. But again, it's kind of like it's very business minded, but it's for information, for coaching, things like that. But it can help you structure your business in certain ways too. But it's just really good, sound business advice, and can help you sell, services, be more persuasive to your potential, clients, and not, if you're like stumbling and bumbling, you feel uncomfortable and awkward. Like, if, I mean, you have to sell at the end of the day, right? I mean, how else are we going to get work? We have to sell our services. So you need to learn those skills as well. So, so a profit first plan, Think and Grow Rich, and Boss Moves.
Good stuff. I like it. Yeah, we've done profit first since day one in our business. We've never wavered from it. So we still do it. I can't recommend it enough. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think that's some of the first books that we probably read when we started out, was that and Pumpkin Plan. And then we've read his other ones too, like
Yeah.
Clockworks and Surge, and I forget the other ones. I think he's got a marketing one now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's a good thinker. I talked about that with Payjack. I got his thoughts on profit first
Yeah.
in the last podcast I just did. But good stuff. I
Yeah.
like it.
For sure.
All right, so I think you touched on this a little bit. What would you say, like, your do you have like a big goal that you work on? And you have all, I feel like we've talked about some substructured goals. Do you have like what is like your destination? Do you have like a destination that you've picked out, or for LCR and just Naylor in general?
Yeah, my destination is one of that I heard. I think I heard Steve Jobs said this. Like, it's entrepreneur's job to put a dent in the universe. So that's my goal, is to put a
That's
dent in the
awesome. I
universe.
love that. Yeah, if you haven't, I know you were talking about audiobooks. I highly recommend he's got an audiobook from or Walter Isaacson, I think, is the greatest biographer that's ever lived, and he wrote one on Steve Jobs. Highly recommend that one. And to
Yeah,
everybody out there listening, it's really, really good.
yeah,
He basically writes on geniuses, and I think Steve Jobs is probably one of the best culture slash team builders. Like, he's probably one of the best ones ever. So
yeah.
just side note there, but
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so like, that's like my ultimate goal, is to put a dent in the universe, however that ends up being. But in the meantime, like, okay, well, what's the path there? So for me, it's like, and I think everyone should do this, is figure out like, well, okay, well, what's your purpose? What's your passion? Like,
mm-hmm.
where your passion and, um, what you're naturally good at and what you're passionate about, like when they intersect, like that's probably your
Yeah.
purpose. So, like, I'm naturally good at connecting people,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm passionate about educating people, like sharing and creating an educational environment. So those two, I feel like that's my purpose. So that's going to help me get to putting a dent in the universe, as long
I
as
love
I,
it. And it's like, it has this super long runway too. I talk about this a lot on my show, but if you can pick something that has, it basically doesn't have an end in sight. That's
right,
powerful, but you
right,
still feel like you're making progress, even though it's insurmountable to actually get there.
right.
That's my favorite framework to work within. So I really love that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
who's the most influential person that you've met? I mean, maybe inside of the green industry, but it could be outside too. Maybe even met personally or just through, listening to their stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
Anybody come to mind instantly?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, instantly, probably because it's fresh, but it's also been 10 years in the making. But Jonathan Potoshnik, the lawn care millionaire, he has affected and impacted so many of us in our industry and outside of our industry. But he's become a good friend of mine. We were just down at Vid Summit in Texas, and Paul and I. And Jonathan lives not too far from Dallas, Texas. So he went to Vid Summit with us, and try to get some takeaways because he's back into YouTube as well after he sold his CRM. And kind of took some time off. He wants to get back into creating content to help young entrepreneurs, and young meaning like business young, doesn't necessarily mean like you're 10 years old or 40
Sure.
years old. He means young like business. I mean, he is passionate about young age wise, like high school entrepreneurs, because they're at a very moldable age, and he wants to kind of help mentor those folks. But at the same time, his content is geared for helping you, the business owner, invest. Like, he's got a new channel, 5 for 50, like
Yep.
spending 5 years for the next 50 years. You know what I mean? Like, do everything you got to do for the next 5 years so that the next 50 will be the life
Okay.
that you want, the business that you want. So that's kind of his philosophy. So, but anyway, so he was learning some stuff from Vid Summit and everything, and we were just spending a lot of great quality time. And this guy is worth tens of millions of dollars, and the fact that he even and I don't want to say that he talks to us. I mean, there's plenty of millionaires out there talking to all of us. But my point is, he's a very humble, genuine, nice human being. I said that to him multiple times. I didn't know what else to say. I'm like, I don't even know what other compliment to give you. But you're just a really good human being. And Paul's like, yeah, I agree. And he's like, Jonathan's like, oh, thank you. No one's ever said that before. It's like, but it's true. Like, we're surrounded by so many different types of people, and so many entitled people, and disgruntled people, and all different levels of types of people in our walk of life and our industry and outside in the real world here and all that. And Jonathan is really someone that I look up to in many ways for that. He's got a wife and kids, and obviously a nice house and all these things, 'cause he's worth so much money. But he started from the ground up. He started push mowing lawns when he was 14, like so many folks have. Like, he's got a story just like everyone else. Like, he grinded out. I remember he was telling us when we were there back in the early days before his city turf landscaping business, got up to the tens of millions of dollars in yearly revenue in those bootstrapping days. His wife was like going and mailing stuff, and putting things in envelopes and doing all this stuff while he was doing like it. And that blows my mind when he says that, and we're sitting in his like backyard of his mansion, and his wife's doing some epic thing, like that rich wives do, and all like it just like in that environment, him saying that, which seems so surreal. Paul and I were just like, wow, we were just like laughing, like, what? Like,
It's
it's
hard to think of them as just like normal people, because
right,
I have several people like that in my life, and I'm just like, wait, you're just one of us, like,
right,
but you're not at the same time.
right, exactly. They've achieved so much, but the fact that he can go back there, the fact that he can reminisce and talk about and reflect on all of those. It's not like it's above him or he forgot
Yep.
it or whatever. Like, he's like, he knows where he came from, and he wants to help everyone get to where they want to go. And he's been that for me and Paul and so many others. And it's just really insightful. And he's one of the ones, like you said in the beginning of this podcast, that you can see how passionate I am when I talk about, all of this, community and social media and LCR media and all that. That's exactly what he tells me every time. He's been telling me that for so long, and I never really got it until recently. But he used to say, man, you need to like, nothing about your lawn, nothing against your lawn care business, but you need to like really like focus on LCR media. Like, that's all you ever talk about to me. And you just get so excited about it. Like, that's what you need to do. And like, I never really got it until like, I mean, I got it, but I didn't really get it until recently. I was like, wait a minute, you know what he means? Everyone else will like climb over each other, stand in a line for an hour to get a chance to ask Jonathan like one question to help improve their lawn care business. I don't talk to him at all about lawn care. I could care less about my lawn care
Right.
business when I'm talking to Jonathan. I'm talking to Jonathan about everything else that we talked
Yeah.
about in this podcast, all about the events and the content and this and that. And he gets all fired up listening to me get all fired up. So I'm like, so he's kind of like been, like my cheerleader with that and really helping me. And he's been generous to be a speaker twice at the LCR Summit, the last one and then this one coming up. And he's not doing any more speaking. He wasn't doing any at all. But I asked him like way in advance, and he was like, yeah, fit it in between his travel schedule and all that. But like that's just not even his thing to really do that at this point. But he did it for me because he knows how passionate I am, and he wants to help me and support me, and also, obviously help everyone that attends the LCR Summit. So he's just a really, really great person that I look up to, and a lot of us look up to. And I know in a lot of ways he and I are peers, but he's definitely a mentor for sure. And he has been influential in so many ways. I mean, he's one of the first people I found on YouTube when I was trying to research how to go from a homeowner to a professional lawn care business provider. The
Hmm.
Lawn Care Millionaire was one of the first videos on there. Like he had been making videos since 2013. And here I am, the beginning of 2014, finding this stuff, and I would just listen. I would just binge all of his videos because it was all like tutorials. Basically, it was all like 2-man
Yeah.
crew versus 3-man crew. This
His
versus
content was
that.
top
Like,
notch.
yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't entertaining, but it was super. Like he wasn't doing anything fun or flashy. He was just standing
It was
there
just
and just giving you facts.
like this dude knows what he's talking about. Like
Exactly.
I've always learned from people like that. It's like there's so many influencers out there and people, and then there's just like 1% of 1% that just speak like no one else, and he's one of those people.
Right.
And you can just
Yes.
tell that he knows what he's talking about because he doesn't have anything to sell you. He's just telling you things, and he's just speaking on the
Exactly.
fly instantaneously. You can tell it's not scripted half the time. He's just talking with wisdom.
Yeah.
And I know some other people in other industries like that, but Jonathan, to me, sets apart in the lawn care stage for sure. I don't know anybody else that talks like him at that level of knowledge, with that level of simplicity that he attaches to it.
I
Um,
agree.
whenever whenever we were getting into lawn care in 2020, when we went up to Lawn Care Life, me and Megan literally listened to his stuff for 4 hours on the way up there because we were just getting into lawn care. We had done bookkeeping, but we hadn't done lawn care. So we wanted to be able to speak the language when we got to Lawn Care Life. And it helped us just be able to talk a little bit on an infant level, when we got up there, and somewhat look like we know what we're talking about in terms of just, we knew finance, but we didn't know lawn care language,
Yeah.
like you throw all these, just like windshield time and stuff like that, you can never even speak on, unless you've been in it. But yeah, I mean, I would contribute a lot of his stuff, allowing us to become good friends with Paul. And Paul invited us on his show, and I probably said several Potocnik quotes or something on his show whenever we did our first interview with him.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff, man. I love it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
Oh, I had something else I was going to say, but it slipped my mind. Yeah, I don't remember. It was something about Potocnik, but anyway.
Oh, that's all good. There's always something good with Potashnik for sure.
Right. So
Jonathan's got all kinds of gems.
yeah, he does. So what do you think what's the best thing about owning your business and the worst thing about owning your business? Because I mean, everybody just sees the flashy part, right? And the excitement. Are there like what would you define it as, like the best and the worst?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Never thought about that. Like because I always say it's got its pros and cons. Like everything else. I mean, I probably would say every pro and con is both a pro and a con, right? So like the buck stops with you, but at the same time the buck stops with you, right? So there's no one to pass the buck to, but there's no one to pass the buck to. Like there's no one to give you a hard time, but you're stuck with all the decisions, so you have that sense of freedom. Like there's no boss, on top of you, and you're in full control, but you're also in full control, which means it's all on you. You have to make the decisions. You have to figure it all out. You have to, live and die on your own sword and all these kind of things. So there's obviously those pros and cons, but for me, it's, because of where I came from, I guess the pros far outweigh the cons, because I know where I came from, what I had to deal with, and I didn't have hardly any control of my future or my destiny or even my job. Like I was always being told what to do, whether I was a store manager or assistant manager. It was like there was always someone telling me what to do. There wasn't as much creativity. I remember talking to a friend of mine on another podcast a while back, and he was like, "Man, it's like you're probably so like bottled up and restricted, like in retail, like you couldn't be creative at all. Like like now you're just like wide open, and you're just coming out with all kinds of stuff, and just because I'm just a creative person. Like I was always a
Yeah.
creative minded person. Like I went to school for art. Like I excelled in art in high school, and then I went to college for fine arts and did all types of different mediums in art. But I never really did anything with it. I didn't become like an art teacher or an artist or anything where I'm a starving artist or anything. I wanted to do something practical. I didn't really know what to do with that, and I just kind of fell into continued staying into retail, I guess, and went into the whole management situation there. But the creativity always comes back out somehow or another. And like now with all the social media over the last 10 years, there's so many ways my creativity has achieved, like has been satisfied doing a lot of the things that I do, like with the content that I create and the events that I put together and this and that, and, creating hats or like whatever, like so many little things to big things that can make small impacts that create a ripple effect to big impacts. And, it makes me feel good. It makes others feel good. And it's just a win-win all the way around. But, again, it's great all the way around, versus what I came from. So it's really hard for me to focus on like what are the worst things or what's the bad things. Like again, I like the weather for sure. I would probably say like the uncontrollable things are probably the worst things about, your own business, and every business is going to be different. But when you have a business that is outside, whether you're building houses or you're doing landscaping or whatever, you're paving, driveways, parking lots, whatever, you're kind of stuck dealing with the weather and different elements like that. So that's a bummer, and it adds a lot of stress sometimes when you have a lot of things to do in a short amount of time, whether it's a seasonal thing or you just have other things going on in your life or whatever, or you just have a lot of work to get done and you're like, I just have to get it all done. You maxed yourself out or whatnot. So, or, you're understaffed, all these things that can definitely create a lot of stress and headaches. I just try to minimize those as much as possible. I try to control what I can control and minimize the things that I can't control. Like I can't control the rain, but at the same time, so I don't schedule a 5-day mowing schedule. I schedule a 4-day mowing schedule to give me a little bit of wiggle room. And that fifth day is either the start of a 3-day weekend, or I'm treating lawns, or I'm getting a head start on trimming bushes, or I'm doing something else that's next up on the list, that's maybe for next week and I can get a head start or whatever, you know what I mean? Like if it's everything's great and we have 4 dry days and everything's good and I get everything done, like that happens once in a blue moon. So normally we're still working Monday through Friday on, on some level. Like maybe we got rained out halfway through one of the days during the week and we got to work a half a day on Friday, like whatever the deal is. But I try to plan for that stuff now. Like you can't plan the rain, but you can try to manage the process, put some, safeguards, best practices into your schedule, into your business, so that you're not running around ragged, working every weekend, stressed out, all that kind of stuff, working overtime while your guys are happy until they're not happy, right? Because that's not sustainable for very long because they're exhausted. And then the pay doesn't matter anymore. So that's kind of like when you allow those uncontrollable things to take over your life and your business, that's where it can really suck. So
Yeah.
I try to make sure that I don't get in those situations, like the example of 4-day instead of 5-day mowing schedule and things like that. So I can do the best I can and not, shoot myself in the foot. Right. And like, I would say to people over the summer, like, be careful. You're maxing yourself out now, but what's going to happen in the fall when, daylight starts, it starts getting darker earlier and earlier, then you have daylight savings time. And now you're trying to finish mowing all these lawns and doing all these projects that you thought that you were getting done easily in the summer because you had all this time of daylight, and now you have less daylight and you're all stressed out. Like, and now you're like, oh man, so think that through. Like, oh, I'm working till 6 every day. Yeah, I'm crushing it. Guess what? You won't be able to do that in the fall. Like, you're going to be
Yeah.
stressed out. It's like, so like just start, these are a lot of things I learned the hard way,
Yeah.
but I was just quick to react to them and try to fix them, find a fix or a solution or a safeguard, so that I wouldn't be so stressed out. That is my number one goal, is to minimize my stress in my life.
Yep.
That's why I left retail to start my own business. That's stressful, of course, but there's a lot of things that I implemented and can still be implemented as a new stress point appears, because there's always going to be something that's going to evolve. I'm just quick to respond to these things so that they don't get me all stressed out and ruin my life, or start taking me down a path I don't want to, be in. I want to be as happy and as healthy as possible, as much as possible.
Hmm. I love what you said about, it gives you the room to be creative. I think that's what makes all humans kind of light up when they talk about things, is the ability to exercise some creativity. I don't really believe the notion that some people have creativity and some people don't. I think everybody is. I actually have a podcast coming out tomorrow. It's what is the purpose of humans? Because I did one on what's the purpose of business, and a lot of it had to do with humans as creators. Like, we create things, and that's what gives us life and energy. And what's funny is, if you think about, the Bible talks about God as the creator, and then we're made in the image of God, and image really just means, you're supposed to reflect what God's characteristics, right? So in a sense, we're all little mini creators. That's just part of being made in the image of God, and I think we suppress that a lot in our culture, because we don't give humans the ability to exercise their creativity. For example, a lot of people think of a creative as just like an artist or a musician or something like that, but everybody that owns a business is a creator. You're creating a system that creates surplus. You are creating something, and you could make that argument across so many different industries. But that's one reason I really think a lot of people should start a business, is because you get to exercise that creativity, and you might not do it from day one, but eventually you're going to have to bring in all these elements of marketing and branding and symbolism of what you stand for. And when you start getting into all those things, it forces you to be creative to get to your destination. If you're not creative, your business is going to die for the most part, or it's going to stay extremely small.
Yeah.
So that's really good. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Now, what's the plan with the lawn care side? Are you going to keep doing lawn care, or are you trying to completely transition into doing the LCR media and separate the lawn care division? Maybe eventually just sell it all off, or you plan on always dual purposing it, or what's the plan
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I mean, for the unforeseeable future, I just want to continue having my lawn care business and keep growing LCR media. Like sometimes it gets a little hectic trying to do both, but the main thing for my lawn care business is just to try and keep it as manageable as possible, on multiple levels. So as long as I can keep my lawn care business manageable and not like becoming like that full-time, corporate job now all of a sudden that is just kind of getting in the way of my creativity or whatever, as long as I can still enjoy, my lawn care business and keep it manageable, and as well as be able to do everything that I want to do with LCR media, then I'm good. Like there's no need to stop doing both or stop doing one or whatever, like I'm passionate about both. So it's
Gotcha.
tough. It's
Okay.
tough to say no, or it's tough to stop doing
Yeah.
one of them, you know what I mean? So it's just all about making it more manageable, instead of making it,
Gotcha.
this big stressful monster. It's like, okay, how can I keep this under control and a more manageable state for me so I can do both and not be stressed out?
Awesome. Yeah, I was just starting to think about it because you were saying how Potocnik was really nudging you towards
Yeah.
doing more at the LCR. I was like, well, is there like a transition where you're just gonna
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
abandon lawn care eventually, or
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine doing that, but like for the reasons I just said, but also because, I mean, it just keeps me like in touch with everything, right? Like, I mean, what would my content become, if I don't
yeah,
have, for
exactly.
me personally, I mean, I know a lot of people have different types of content and all that, but all of my content is my business, and talking about my business or talking about the lawn care business or whatever. Like, of course, like, Jonathan hasn't mowed a lawn in who knows how many years, right? But, and he still has all this business knowledge, but he also got to a whole nother level with that, where he's at that level where he's teaching where he was at, like he's not teaching how to mow a lawn necessarily. He's teaching how to run a business, how to make $1 million business and a $10 million business and all the things that are involved in all that. Like so that makes sense. But even he said to me that a while back that he had to wanted to get back in the weeds because some of his data in his head is outdated because he hasn't been in the field or really just in the mix at all really for so many years. So he might be telling somebody one thing and it's like, oh, we don't do that anymore, or that's not actually a thing anymore, or whatever. So like, you got to still stay relevant and stay, up to speed on like, the local trends and what's going on in the business world. So for that as well, I don't want to not have my lawn care business because I want to stay in the mix of it all. So
Sure.
in the mix of it all, so I know what's going on and I have more things to talk about. Like, hey, we're dealing with this or we're dealing with that. Like all these army worms or whatever. Like, like it's all like a part of everything. It's just he doesn't want me to get dragged back. He doesn't want to see like my lawn care business like holding me back from LCR media is basically what he's saying. Like, like my goal shouldn't be to grow like a big multi-million-dollar lawn care business. Like my
Yeah.
goal should be to grow LCR media to whatever that
Yeah.
is, whether it's a dollar amount or just impact. To me, it's impact. I mean, obviously dollars make sense also, but it's just trying to keep the lawn care business smaller and more manageable so that doesn't take up so much of my time so that I have time for LCR medias. Ultimately, I think the point there.
Gotcha. Now, I think contentment is the key to getting out of the rat race. I'm curious your thoughts on just this is probably a message for the younger guys, but what do you think the balance is between being content while also maintaining a growth mindset to carry out your vision? So how do you have this growth mindset while still practicing a level of I have enough? So where's the line there? Because a lot of times you can get into a growth mindset and you just want to live lavishly, right? So how do you balance the two personally? How do you do that for much as for the younger guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if living lavishly is even something in my vocabulary or in my mindset. For me, it's just I never want to stop making an impact. I never want to stop seeing what's possible. I never want to stop growing personally and professionally, whatever that is and however that looks like right now and probably for the unforeseeable future. That's LCR media and whatever I can do with LCR media, whatever impact I can do building and growing communities through networking events and content creation like that. Those that's me. Those are my pillars. Like there's no contentment with that. Like, like even like someone said to me, like you should be a friend of mine said, you should, aren't you really happy? Like you finally, like, you did the, after the first LCR summit, like, aren't you happy? Like that was something I remember you talking about back in, like 2019 or whatever. And you finally got it to happen. Like, and I'm like, oh man, actually, yeah, it's two separate conversations, but recently someone said then they were like, did you, like take a minute and like like appreciate that, like like pat yourself on the back or whatever, like. And I'm like, because I was like all in the middle of like talking about the next summit and all these things, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm just always trying to think of the next thing and move on to the next thing that like I
Yeah,
guess I forget to like think back and appreciate all that. I appreciate it in the moment, but I'm like now I'm moving on to the next thing, like or the
right. But
next
you
one or
live,
whatever.
but you seem like the guy who lives as if he already has enough. That's kind of what I'm getting at with the
I
contentment.
gotcha.
Yeah,
I
that's what I'm
gotcha.
getting at. So how
I
do you live
gotcha.
as if I'm very happy, I have all that I need, and how do you still maintain that growth mindset? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably just because I had nothing. So like
Hmm.
anything above that should be enough.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of times I think it's more of a this is like maybe not the most fun topic, but it's more of a mindset, more of a mental thing that people are probably struggling with that might have something to do with their upbringing, their environment, traumatic experiences, whatever, that's making them feel like they have to constantly get more to satisfy something that's missing. Like there's a gap, there's a void, there's an emptiness in you that you feel like you have to constantly have more. And I'm sure there's something like that for me too, right? Like I didn't have a father and
Hmm.
I have the sense of community, which is driving me to do these things, but it's benefiting everyone, right? But
Right.
sometimes it comes at a cost, right? I'm exhausted. Sometimes I don't get enough sleep. I'm doing this and that, and my mind won't stop working. I'm doing all these things, and I got to make sure that I stop and settle down and all that. Like as far as like material things or whatnot, I mean that's um, I never had anything. So I don't really know what it's like to have a whole lot. And sometimes people, when they get things, or I'm not some famous rich person, but like a lot of times when people go from being poor to rich, all of a sudden they're buying like 50 different cars and Bugattis and all these things, and they're living
Right.
lavishly, and they go broke or something, whatever. Like, I don't think that would ever be me if I ever became like that. Yeah, maybe I might get an extra watch or something and a pair of shoes, but like that I just like, there's certain things that I like a watch or something, but I mean, how many, I'm not a big vehicle person. I'm not I just don't, it's just not my thing. So maybe my pre-wiring, just DNA or whatever, like I just never desired a lot of those things. What I like is to go places and do things. So that's where
Mhm.
where we spend our money is experiences, trips. We go on all kinds of epic vacations and go here, there, and everywhere. That's where money's spent there. I mean, we have a nice house and vehicles that get us from point A to point B and things like that. But for me, that's just never been a focus. But I do have to make sure that I don't have like 50 watches, of course. I have to make sure there's certain things that I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
let's dial that back. Let's focus. And, some of that comes back from childhood, things, and stuff. But ultimately it's just about being conscious of that, focusing on the priorities, like how can you like, I enjoy investing money in my businesses the same way as I do getting a watch or something, for example,
Yeah.
so I just try and redirect that energy to be more productive,
So
like,
you get fulfillment out of your goal is basically what you're saying.
right. Right. And like there's some of my close friends that are recovering alcoholics. They are very good at growing businesses and being serial entrepreneurs because they've just refocused that addiction, that energy that made them addicted to substances. They just refocus that energy to building these enterprises and spending time with family and, just being hyper focused on these different things and these different goals that make them very successful. Of course, that comes at a cost, right? They're tired. It seems like they never sleep. They're pounding Red Bulls and whatnot, but it's better than pounding beers or, whatever, drugs and alcohol. Like, they're trying to focus, like I said, repurpose all the energy for better things. And I think that's, everyone could kind of learn from that and just really, focus on your goals, make sure they're good goals, make sure they're things that are going to help not just you, but others. And always think about where you came, what you didn't have, what you have now, how you frame things, that for sure, like, really helps come into play. If any of that made sense or answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think you said that well. Well, Naylor, I've really enjoyed talking with you today, man. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any final words? And also, where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I think, I've pretty much covered everything that I can think of. And, check out the LCR Media podcast. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but our episode, it will probably already be out or is coming out soon, based on when this one comes out. But so you and I had a good conversation as well, on the LCR Media podcast. So check that out. It's kind of like a vlogging podcast, if you will. Like a lot of my episodes are me updating everyone of my business and businesses and events and just kind of just life and things like that, in addition to interviewing different entrepreneurs like Jonathan Potoshnik and yourself, and just kind of diving into certain topics for businesses and what can help you go to the next level and things like that. So that's kind of that's the best place. And then YouTube, I'm on all social media platforms, but the most places where I am twice a week is on the podcast. And, I try to upload a YouTube video at Lawn Care Rookie, every week, sometimes every other week, whatever. But I try to get as consistent as I can. And then on Instagram, I'm posting stuff all the time at Lawn Care Rookie as well. But I'm on Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter and everywhere, X, whatever. I'm on all the things, but I don't post that regularly on all the other things. It's mainly Instagram, YouTube, and the podcast, LCR Media Podcast.
Awesome. Well, Naylor, I enjoyed talking with you today, man.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you as well, Joey. I look forward to seeing you at some point, hopefully in the near future, and we can catch up and hang out.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Goodbye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Well, it says stopping, but it hasn't officially stopped yet. So I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, I see. It's still recording. Maybe there's a little delay there.
I don't know what's going on. I got a good connection. I can always cut it out. That's weird.
Is everything uploaded? Mine says 99% uploading. That's good. It still shows recording on my side. Like it says record. Oh, okay. Ah, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I would say many, but I've definitely done, I've done a bunch. And then I usually break them up in like a two-part or something just because sometimes I run out of content. So I'm trying to not content, I run out of time to make content. So a lot of times I'll just utilize that like, oh, this is a good long one. Like anything over an hour, I usually split into two episodes, unless it's like a solo episode that went into like an hour and 5 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes, I'll just leave it. But if it's an interview, I'll usually break it up into one or two parts. And sometimes, and if we have the time, I try to push them longer so that I can split them up. So I have, like, hey, that's 1 week right there. That's a Tuesday, Thursday episode, part one, part two, boom, and I can just kind of stay on top of content. But if they're shorter, that's fine too. Like a long time ago when I first started, I say a long time ago, it was only like almost 4 years ago. But when I first started podcasting or wanted to podcast, I asked some people, some non-podcasters, I asked like audience, people that would listen, what do they think? And they were saying like, like Paul's are kind of too short. They're like 30 minutes or less, and half of them are commercials. And like you start to get into it and it's over, but then there's like other people's like an hour and change, and it's like, man, it takes me like a week to like listen to it, or all day, because I'm like listening to it in bits and pieces when I'm driving here or there, or I'm on the mower, or I'm this or that. Like I can't necessarily just binge that whole hour and change. So they're like maybe like 45 minutes or something. Like, so I kind of came up with 45 minutes as like a good average sweet spot. So anything 30 to 45 minutes is what I try to do when I have interviews. But if we're vibing, everything's rolling, and there's lots of good question and answer, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff, I'm not going to cut it short unless someone has a hard stop or something. But if we have all the time in the world, I'll just let it run. And if it seems like we're kind of getting stale or we're running out of topics, then I'll wrap it up. So I have that 45-minute mindset, but then I also have that freedom of, if it's going to go long, it's going to go long. Let it flow. If it's going to flow, let it flow. But and then if we're at events, I purposely try to keep them shorter so that I can get as many in as possible. So like when we're at Equip at Pod Row, when we were at all the other Pod Rows, we were banging them out like 15-20 minutes episodes, and that you can get a lot in when you're focused like that, especially when you're interviewing people you've never met before, or you just, there's someone they're following you, on social media or whatever. There might not even be as much conversation anyway, so it's even easier sometimes to make them shorter and sweeter, and you can just ask kind of some standard questions and kind of make some ad libs and go off on some tangents based off of their answers. And but try and keep them short and sweet, 15-20 minutes, so you can bang out two or three an hour and get more done in an hour. So that's how us, me, Caleb, Paul, Payjack in our prime, when we'd be at some of these events, we'd get like 10 to 15 episodes in one day, because we'd just be cranking them out, 15-20 minute episodes. Yeah, a lot of talking, very little breaks, a lot of people around, like let's keep it going, let's go. It's a ton of content, and it fills our bucket up, and now we don't have to scramble so much to get new episodes. And I just try to stay ahead all the time as much as I can and just keep recording, even though I have that overflow. But yeah, everyone's got their own vibe. I think your audience will kind of tell you what they do and don't like. Like I remember Paul said that his solo episodes don't do as well. Like people, I don't know if it's still the same, but once upon a time he said that, people didn't really like his solo episodes. They were kind of boring or whatever. So I don't know if he changed like what he talked about or anything like that since then, but I know he really tries to just interview people. And for me, I wouldn't say it's the opposite, but most of my reviews and people that I meet in person, they're always talking about my solo episodes, or I call them my IBG episodes, my in between guest episodes, where I'm just talking about a specific topic that's coming up, or something that just happened in my business, or getting ready for, hey, there's these next few guests that are coming up. We're talking it's mulch season, or it's aeration season, or this is, we're at Equip, or Pod Row, and then there's going to be a batch of content. Like people really like the IBG episodes from me, the solo episodes, because I just dive deep into all these things. So I guess it just depends on your audience and your delivery and all that. So yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think everything went great. I think everything. Yeah, yeah. You sounded good. You had a lot of. I mean, you had questions ready to go. You're firing it off, and I think everything went well. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. Uh, Yeah, that I'm not sure either. Well, I was interviewing someone and they told me we had a similar predicament, but I was the host. But she was like, "Yeah, I'll just," and she used Riverside and said that this has happened sometimes. And she's like, "Yeah, we just like leave it up. We just like leave, like we turn the camera off and we just leave, and then just eventually it just finishes doing its thing because otherwise," she said, it won't work or whatever. And I was like, "Dang, that's ridiculous! Like that hardly ever happens for me. That would be annoying." So I don't know. I mean, I can just shut my camera off and you can just check back and see if everything's good and then close it out. I don't know. I don't want to mess anything up on you. Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It does. That's why I said that. And it says 99% uploaded. Like it doesn't say 100% of when the recording is done. That's weird. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, the timer's still going too. An hour and 54 minutes. What in the world? That is interesting. For me, like for next to me, huh? Something new. I mean, I'm no Riverside expert by any means. So, but yeah, yeah. So we'll just run with it. Yeah. Um, I don't know. Hold on one second. Let me just.